So I'm going to talk about portraiture tonight. I know some of you are keen portrait photographers because I've met you. Some of you probably aren't so keen portrait photographers, but even if you're a landscape photographer, a nature photographer, a street photographer, hopefully you can pick up a few tips tonight, even if you're just going to be photographing friends and family. So I'm going to talk about everything I know about portraiture, basically. Some information at you. Hopefully you'll remember some of it. So a little bit about me, first of all. I'm Emma Finch. I'm a Manchester-based photographer. I went professional about 8 years ago, and I started with Emma Finch Photography, which is mostly family and children and lifestyle photography. So at the time I had 2 very young children, so they were my practice subjects. Never in a million years thought I would become a professional photographer. I just wanted to take good pictures of my children, always in natural light. Really was just documenting their childhood. But my husband bought me a website template just for fun. I filled it in. I don't know how, but I managed to get a client who, I don't know how he found me. I must have been on page 50,000 on Google, but anyway, he found me, booked me, and that's how it launched. Ever since then, it's been word of mouth. So very much to start with, I was very niche, very young children, because that's what I was showing in my portfolio and that's what I was shooting. Word of mouth, so people with children recommending other people with children, and it grew from there. So I still run that business. About 5 years ago, I wanted to learn studio photography, which was a complete dark art to me, did not understand it at all. And I spent about a year hiring studios, practicing with studio lights, and I launched Belle Privé Photography about 4 years ago maybe. And that's very much studio work. So studio portraiture, I do an awful lot of commercial lingerie and boudoir and vintage. I took on a studio about 3 years ago in central Manchester, and that's the business that seems to have got me noticed. That's the one that gets the awards and the publications and whatnot. Around the same time, I partnered with Graham Curry, who I believe is coming to see you soon for a portrait night. So I met him at South Manchester Camera Club. He was the president then, and I was the publicity secretary then. And we got together and started photography session days, which I know some of you have been on, and thank you. So we specialise in portrait training and also running portfolio building days, character models in unusual locations around the Northwest. So the 3 businesses keep me very busy. I love what I do, absolutely love what I do. It's my dream job, and I know I'm lucky to make a career out of it. This is just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that I do, the 2 sides of my personality. So Emma Finch Photography is very much cute, natural light, child portraits. Belle Privé Photography is the complete other end of the spectrum. It's studio lighting, it's very styled, and it's mostly females. So that's an example of what I do. Some key achievements. I will stop talking about me and give you some portrait tips soon, but just to show you what I do. I've been finalist in Portrait of the Year last year and also the year before. I've had over 50 publications and 7 front covers, and I'll talk a little bit about getting published at the end, because it's easier than you think. So I'll give you some tips if you want to get your work published. We all want our work to be seen, so it's a great way to get your work out there. I used to be a photographer for Vintage Life magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. I was the lead photographer on the Emmeline Pankhurst statue project in Manchester. There was a campaign to get a female statue in Manchester, and I was the photographer on that, which led to me shooting at the Houses of Parliament, which was a great experience. And I've also worked for Rebecca Adlington, the swimmer, with her swimming business. So very varied. Every day is completely different, but I absolutely love it. So tonight I'm going to talk about portraiture. No matter what I'm shooting, I'm inherently a portrait photographer. I'm all about the face. So I'm going to give you lots of tips tonight, whether you're a serious portrait photographer or whether you're taking pictures of the grandkids. Hopefully some of this will help. So it goes without saying that always focus on the eyes. If the eyes are soft, then the image is unusable, so you'll need to delete it. So I always toggle my focus onto the eyes. It's all about the eyes with portraiture. When you see an image, you want to look straight in the face and you want to look straight into the eyes. So to reduce dark circles under the eyes, a reflector or even something white or a piece of tin foil just on their lap even will bounce light up. It really fills in shadows on the face. It fills in eye bags. It's really quite flattering. So that's a good tip. Doesn't cost much, just to reflect some light back in. You want to always try and get catch lights in the eyes. Catch lights, the little light in the eyes, just to make people look alive. If you're very bored one day, you can look at magazines and pictures, and if you zoom into the eyes, you can see how the image was lit. You can see if it was an octabox, a window, a strip box. So zoom into the eyes of some portraits just to see how they were lit. You never want to show too much white in the eye. So if they're looking to the side and it's mostly white and not much pupil, judges always say that's a no-no. So just bear that in mind when they've got their head turned away. If you've got someone who is a blinker, and especially if you're using studio lights, some people have really sensitive eyes, and they're going to blink, 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 and most of your pictures, they're going to have their eyes closed. So if you've got a blinker, you either want to wait till they've just blinked and click, or if they close their eyes and you count them in, so 3, 2, 1, and they open their eyes straight into the shutter, you're not going to get a blink. They're not going to be affected by the studio lights as much. And I do that with clients sometimes if they're really sensitive to the studio lights, because studio lights are really bright. You always want to shoot at eye level, pretty much. It's the most flattering level to be. So if you're shooting with children, you're going to end up on the floor. If you're shooting someone really tall, you might need to stand on a box. But do what you need to do to get to their eye level. And the other tip is watch tension in the mouth. So if you're working with a professional model, you don't have to worry about this. That's their job. They'll look fantastic no matter what. If you're shooting, your wife, your neighbour, the husband, your cousin, and they don't want to have their photograph taken, just watch where people hold their tension, and it tends to be in the mouth, in the shoulders, and in the hands as well. And we'll come on to that a little later. But you want your subject to be as relaxed as possible. Just going to touch on posing for men and for women and also for children. So with male portraits, again, watch tension in the mouth, the shoulders and the hands. I've mentioned that before. You want your subject to be as relaxed as possible. And I think the way to do that is just to talk to them. Explain what you're doing. If you're using studio lights, explain, if you're fiddling with the lights, tell them what you're doing. Make sure that they're comfortable and relaxed. Give them compliments, give them genuine compliments, and just chat generally. I tend to do sort of click, click, chat, and people at the start, they've got sort of deer in the headlights look. They look absolutely terrified. And then after a couple of minutes, they sort of relax into it. And by the end of the shoot, they're like professional models. They're completely relaxed and they're loving it. So you really need to try and do what you need to do to relax your subject. With male posing, it tends to be giving them something to do with their hands. So, adjusting the tie, looking at the watch, holding a prop, hands in pocket. So with male posing, they're doing something. And, if you've got a professional male modeling, so I know you've got Graham and I think Dean and a few other people in soon, just watch what they do, because you can learn a lot from models. They will, every time they hear a click, they will change their pose. And it gives you some ideas of how to pose men if they're not a model. So if you have to shoot a man who's a bit uncomfortable in front of the camera, you can at least give them some tips to what to do. When you're cropping, don't crop on the joints. So don't crop at the wrist or at the elbow. If you have to crop a limb, crop mid-limb. Ideally try and get, certainly if you're shooting upper body, try and get all of the arms and hands in. Always looks a little bit awkward if you've got a bit of a joint cropped out. Watch the details before you shoot. So always check there's no stray hairs, wonky ties, anything that would be an absolute pain to sort in Photoshop. You want to try and get it as correct as possible in camera. And glare from glasses is always something to watch. If you've got glare in glasses, it's really difficult to edit out. In which case you don't want them directly facing a light. You want to sort of feather the light so that they don't have the light reflected in the glasses, because it is a nightmare to edit. With female posing, again, watch the tension. Give them lots of compliments, genuine compliments. I find anything that comes into my head, I will say it. So, oh, that's a pretty necklace, or your eyes are really blue. I mean, nothing too sort of smarmy, but if you're thinking it, say it. It really does. You can see, certainly with women, a flicker in the eye when they get a compliment, and it really does make a difference. So for slender arms, you don't want arms pressed into the body. It makes arms look bigger. You want a little bit of space between the arms. You'll find that us women are quite awkward to shoot because we want to look younger, we want to look slimmer, we want to look our absolute best. So just some of these tips are quite useful. You always want curves, so you want to see the waist. So whether you're shooting someone who's a size 6 or someone who's a size 26, you want to see the waist, because that's usually the narrowest point on a woman. So you want a little bit of space around there so you can see the shape. Posing hands. Hands is where you really will see, even if the face is relaxed, sometimes the hands haven't relaxed. And that's the thing to really notice. I think when we're taking a photo, we're thinking about the composition and the camera settings and the lighting. Make sure you just check to see what the hands are doing. With women, you want really relaxed, sort of ballet hands, really graceful, gentle touches, really. You don't want the tension in the hand, you don't want a fist, and you don't want sort of great big sort of banana hands either. So really do watch the hands, because it can make or break an image. And where you touch tends to be where you look. So if you're, touching your hair, that's where the viewer will look. If you've got your hands near your face, that's where the viewer will look. So be mindful of what their hands are doing and how relaxed they're looking. This is a really good one. Cropping at the narrowest point on a body. It really is slimming. So on a woman, I usually crop 3/4 length, which is mid-thigh or just above the knee, or at the waist. If you crop across the hips or you crop across the chest, they're going to look bigger and they're not going to thank you for that. So always cropping at the narrowest point is very flattering. With women, again, shooting at eye level, or if they've got a double chin and they've mentioned it and they're conscious of it, shooting just higher than eye level will give a bit more definition to the jawline, which again is flattering. Again, watching the details. So if your necklace is twisted round and you've got the catch at the front, that's going to irritate you when you come to edit it. Twisted straps and hairs across the face, all these things which they look small, but they're absolute pain to edit. So try and get it as right as possible to begin with. And then generally speaking, turn the body about 45 degrees away. So they're slightly turned, head towards the camera. And then again, it's a slimming effect for women. I'm going to touch on children. So if you've got kids or grandkids and you struggle to shoot them, I'm going to give you some tips. If you are a sports photographer, you'll be a very good child photographer, especially if there's young children involved. They can be very tricky to shoot, as I'm sure you know. So find out a little bit about the child in advance. I always ask clients, they fill in a questionnaire beforehand, and I find out what they like, what they watch on TV and what animals they like. And so you can just build a bond to start with, get to know them, chat about what they're into. If they're very young, you want to be shooting around their their nap times. Youngest children are freshest in the morning. When they're tired and grumpy, you've lost them. There's no way you're going to get good shots from a grumpy child. If they're very young, they're in charge of the shoot, and you need to know that. There's no way they're going to do what you want them to do. So you just have to let them lead it, and hope that you get the right shots. Be patient and flexible and anticipate their moves. So you need to be down at their level on the floor. You need to try and anticipate what they're going to do, and get the shot. And as I say, if you're a sports photographer, that's where that comes in. You need to be in the right place at the right time. And expect to spend the whole shoot on the floor if they're very little. Bringing things that you might need: spare clothes, wipes, treats, bribes. Do what you need to do to get the shot. Sweets. I always ask them to bring a blanket to sit on as well. With children, I want them to feel like it's a day in the park. I never shoot children in the studio. They're always on location, and I always let them feel like they're having fun in the park. So I have my long lens on. I stand quite a way back. I let them do what they want to do. If they want to play in the leaves, if they want to kick a ball, if they want to climb a tree, let them do what they want to do. And I'll always get them to think it's their idea. So I'll say, what do you think about that tree? That's a good tree. Yeah, what a good idea. Let's go over there. So they think that they're in charge, and they love that. So you're more likely to get good shots with younger children if they think that they're in charge of it. So these two little ones here, and I love this shot. It's one of my favourite shots of children, and this one got me an award. I think they were aged 3 and 4. They're not going to pose for you. You have to pray to the gods of photography that they're going to be in the right position when they're in the right light, especially if you're working with natural light. But these two, they were very good. They were standing on a little bridge, and I just said, "Oh, can you give each other a kiss?" And I just caught it at the right time. They were really cute. But that was lucky, really. They could have, I don't know, hit each other over the head or something. I don't know. So you just have to be lucky with little ones. So when they're little, you just have to hope for the best. 6 to 12-year-olds, you have got a window of opportunity that they're going to do what you ask them to do, albeit they're not going to do it for very long. My two are in this category, and they've got a little bit of patience to do it. Need a little bit of bribing with some chocolate. Once you've lost them, you've lost them. So you need to work fast. You need to know what you want to do and know where the light is, and then work pretty fast. 12 to 18-year-olds, they're either excellent at posing, sometimes a bit too much if they're on Instagram and they're doing all the sort of sassy posing, or they're just really awkward because their parents are making them have a photo shoot, and that's not cool. So it could go either way with teenagers, but at least they're more capable of doing what you ask them to do. If you're working with babies and toddlers, you do have to work very, very quickly. You need to have your camera settings ready and shoot slightly faster than you would normally. I find with really little ones, giving them something to hold, so a flower, a leaf, a blade of grass, even anything, a little toy that's not too obtrusive in the picture, anything to hold will capture their attention for a split second so you can get the shot. So quite often that's how I get the shot, but you have to be ready to take it fast before they move off or before they lose interest in it. Again, you have to let them take the lead in their own time, let them do what they want to do, and try and get natural reactions. So if you have to make a fool of yourself and make funny noises, and you got to do what you need to do to make them laugh naturally, because it's the only way, because there's little babies are not going to, if they're not happy, they're going to show it in the pictures, or get the parents to help make them laugh. Younger children, again, you've got to work quickly, let them play, let them have fun, capture what they're doing. A really good one is to get them to whisper a secret in the other one's ear. This works with adults as well, actually. Get them to whisper a secret in the other one's ears, because they'll usually say something ridiculous or naughty, or if you ask adults to do it, in fact, that God knows what they whisper, but it always ends in a giggle. So it's quite a good one to sort of loosen people up and get a shot that looks quite intimate and close, You have to sort of give them prompts. Holding hands is another one. Holding hands and walking towards you, or putting them tummy to tummy, like this. This is my two in the snow. Tummy to tummy or back to back. You can get them to pose for a split second before they've lost interest. So again, you've got to have your camera settings ready. Think about your background. Think about your light. We'll talk about light a bit later on. Posing teenagers, yeah, you've got a lot more opportunity to pose teenagers. They're more likely to do what you want them to do. But you don't want anything too posy. So you want them to look a bit more natural. But again, if it's a family, you want them to look connected. Pinterest is absolutely fantastic for ideas. So I use Pinterest for lots of my shoots, and there's loads of ideas about posing families and posing different groups on there. So if you're not on Pinterest, I recommend having a look on there, just to pull together mood boards for shoots. Just touching quickly on prompts, as to get a reaction from children, you need to, they're looking to you, really. So whispering a secret, that's a good one. Asking them if something is yucky or yummy. Brussels sprouts, are they yucky or yummy? It becomes a game for them. Chocolate, is that yucky or yummy? And you'll get a natural, they'll shout, yeah, it's yummy, or oh no, you get sort of natural reactions from them. Getting them to look in the lens can be difficult because you've got a great big black piece of machinery in front of your face and they can't see you. So when I'm shooting, I tend to not stay behind my camera, keep peeping out from behind the camera so they can see your face. I even do that with adults, actually. Otherwise, it can be a bit intimidating if there's always a camera in front of the face. But can you see your face in my lens, or can you see the dinosaur in my lens? And then they'll look intently in the lens. So at least you're getting them to look in the right direction. You can tell them a funny story. So I always tell them about how when I was doing a photo shoot outside with a family, a dog came and did a wee on my camera bag, and little children find that hilarious. So I always tell that story. And then if you've got a family, 4, 5, 6 people, to get some sort of engagement and reaction from them, everybody look at mummy, everybody look at daddy, or everybody look at the person with the stinkiest feet, or everybody look at the person, I don't know, anything you want really, and make up some silly ones. And it usually gets them giggling, looking at each other, and they're having fun, and you get some natural shots that way. Simon Says is a good one for awkward kids that won't do anything that you ask them to do. An Eskimo kiss is quite a cute one for siblings when they're little as well, because it gets them close, and you can get some nice shots that way. So touching on styling, think about your background in advance of the shoot and which colours are going to complement it. So darker colours will recede into the background. So they're very slimming, although not as noticeable. Lighter colours come forward in the image. So those of you that shoot weddings know it's difficult to shoot white, especially a big white dress. White's a very dominant colour. If I'm booking a model, I tend to tell them not to wear white and not to wear black either, because it can look very dark and not noticeable in an image, whereas white just dominates. And because I'm a portrait photographer, so again, it's all about the face for me. So the lightest part of any image, of any portrait image, should be the face. You want to look straight in that face. So if they're wearing a big white blouse, you're going to look straight at the blouse and not at the face. So if you have any control over what they wear, then try and suggest not those colours. Busy patterns as well, and anything too bright around the face can really detract from the face. So you don't want any busy patterns, anything too much going on. And also think about your background. So this is a male model, Pip, the gentleman. He's fairly well known, and it was a shoot for Tweed Maker, the tweed suit brand. So the colours that he's wearing ties in with the colours of the background. It was absolutely pouring down. You can probably see bits of rain on there, but it just works because it sits well together. With women will always need slightly more makeup than that they would wear every day. particularly if you're using lights. It tends to wash out the makeup. So with my studio shoots, I have a makeup artist, and they wear so much makeup. And I think some of the clients I've never worn that much makeup before, but on camera it looks absolutely fantastic because the lights are so bright. It needs it. So slightly more makeup than usual for women. I'm going to move on to lighting now, which is slightly more technical side of things. Some of this may help you if you're doing the shoots that you're going to be doing soon. This is the kit that I use. So my workhorse is my Canon 5D Mark IV, and I also have a Mark III as my backup body. Lenses. The lens that's on all the time is my 24-70 2.8. I've also got a 50mm 1.4, which is for more detail work. I don't tend to shoot that many portraits with it because the 50mm can distort the face a little bit, especially if you're quite close. It can make, I don't know, noses bigger, and it looks a little bit, your face can look a little bit more caricatured. If you can use a longer lens, use a longer lens. So if I'm outside, I'll use my 70-200 2.8, which is beautiful because there's no distortion at all. I'll use it on 200mm. I'll shoot 2.8, so you get the beautiful diffused background behind, which really makes people stand out from the background. My studio isn't huge, so I don't tend to use that one in the studio, but I use the 24-70, usually at about the 70 end, just so it keeps everything nicely in proportion. My lights of choice are Pixapro Pica 200s. The reason I use those, they're sort of mid-range. If you don't know much about lights, they're sort of like a big speed light, except you can't use them on your camera. And they're very easy to use. I work on location as well as in the studio, and they work for both. And the battery will last all day. So I started off using speed lights, and the battery just goes. And I don't find speed lights quite as intuitive as the Pica 200s. So that's what I use in the studio on location, and that's what we use on our events as well. My modifier of choice, and I have I've been through lots of modifiers over the years. In fact, when you start, you buy all the gear, and so-and-so's got this, they said that was good, and I've seen that, and that looks good. So you buy all the gear, and you don't really know what to do with it. And one day I got my daughter's model head, like a doll's head, and set the lights up, took lots of shots using all the different modifiers just to see what the lights would do, to see which modifier I preferred, to learn about studio lights. Actually, you move it forward, you move it back, you change the settings, and it was a really good exercise because my preferred choice, especially shooting predominantly women in the studio, is I want a soft light. So I use a 47-inch Octabox from Pixapro. I also have some from Nuia. They're very cheap and cheerful, but actually they're very, very good. And they're about £25 on Amazon. So the reason why I mostly use the Octabox is because it's so soft. It's a very flattering light. It's very easy to work with. And 90% of what I do is with one light, and it's an Octabox modifier. Lighting doesn't have to be complicated at all. I think I went on a lighting course years ago to learn studio lights, and it absolutely terrified me. I think there was about 7 speed lights going at one point, and that's what just completely threw me. Whereas actually, if you break it down, it just needs to be simple. You just need enough light to light your subject the way you want to light it. I do sometimes use a hard light modifier, such as a gridded beauty dish. The gridded beauty dish is this one on the right, the big black one. That's not modified as much. The light sort of comes out in the direction that it's pointed. It's got the grid on, so it's very, very directional light, and that works for film noir work, for vintage Hollywood style headshots. If you want quite a harsh light, I use that. So those are my two modifiers of choice. But if I only had to buy one, or if I was recommending you to buy one for portraits, it would be an Octobox. Generally speaking, with the Octobox, the bigger the better. As big as you've got space for, the bigger it is, the softer it is, the more light you're going to get. And positioning of it is usually you have the bottom of it in line with the chin of your subject. The reason why portrait photographers like the Octobox is because the catch lights kind of look circular in the eyes. So it's like the sun, it feels more natural. And also it's slightly higher positioning than you would think as well, because then that's a nice, it feels natural. When we're outside, we're lit by the sun. So it's the same sort of thing. So slightly higher positioning, the round catch lights in the eyes, and it just has a more natural feel. You can use square soft boxes, strip boxes, but you see the reflection in the eye, so you can see the shape of it. Not that it makes a difference. I'm being really fussy here. If you're a purist, you want a slightly more circular shaped catch light in the eye. So lighting outdoors. This is probably the easiest way to shoot portraits. So you want to plan the time of day. The best light is in golden hour, so that's the hour or so before the sun goes down. If you can't shoot then first thing in the morning. So with my children shoots, I try and do it first thing. The children are fresher, the light is decent then. Towards the end of the day, not everyone can make it that late in the evening, but that is definitely the best time of day. You don't want to be shooting in the midday sun, even if it is cloud cover and it is diffused. Lighting straight from above is always quite unflattering, really. Bright sunshine, as you know, is the worst to shoot in. So you're either going to get silhouettes, you're going to get squinting into the sun. It's going to be very, very contrasty. It just doesn't work. So if you have to shoot in the bright sunshine, you want to be looking for the shade. Wherever the shade is where you're going to shoot. Don't be trying to shoot in bright sunshine. It doesn't really work. So cloudy days are much easier to shoot in. That's the absolute best. So first thing in the morning, last thing at night, cloudy days, you've got nature's softbox up there. It gives you much more flexibility and many more options to shoot for locations if you're outside. Otherwise, you're just looking for shade. So you're under a tree somewhere. And a good way to see where the light is to use the palm of your hand to see how the light is going to fall on your subject's face. So if I'm outside and it's a cloudy day, sometimes it's not always obvious where the sun is, direction of the sun. So I'm walking around with my hand like this to see where the sun is and to see how it's going to fall. I think people wonder what I'm doing sometimes, but use the palm of your hand to sort of find out where the direction of the sun is, and you want to position your person towards the sun, and you'll also see how it's going to fall on their face by using the palm of your hands. But lighting outdoors is definitely the easiest lighting that we're going to talk about tonight. Natural light indoors, again, is absolutely fantastic. So I quite often tell people that the best light in my entire studio is my window. My studio is in an old cotton mill in Manchester. It has a huge industrial window, and the light is fantastic. So quite often I'll just put a backdrop up near the window, directly facing the window, put my client in front of it. I'll stand in the window. So she's fully lit by the window light, and it's so soft. It's so easy to shoot with. So this model here, Lydia, that's just shot with natural light. So you can see how flattering it is because the light is full onto her. It's not shadowy. The color temperature of natural light is quite cool, so 5,500 Kelvin. Because it's quite cool, it sort of tends to even out skin tones. So if there's redness or a yellowness to the skin, it can even out skin tones, so it makes your editing a little bit easier. This black backdrop behind her is a huge canvas. Where I am in the mill, it's all artist studios, so there's painters and sculptors and mosaic makers and all things creative. And someone was getting rid of a huge canvas that was painted on. It wasn't very nice painting. And I said I'd take it, and I painted it with matte black chalk paint. And it's the best backdrop that I've got. It shoots really well because there's a little bit of texture in it, but it's fairly neutral. So you don't have to spend a lot on buying backdrops. In fact, I quite often suggest to people to buy offcuts of material from the fabric shop. You can use duvets. You can anything at all behind your subject. You don't have to spend a fortune on professional backdrops. You just need some material or painted piece of wood or anything really. So if you're shooting with natural light from a window, then you're going to need to put your ISO up a little bit and shoot a little bit wider than you would if you're in the studio. But it's very beautiful light, obviously very easy to work with. So one light. This is my go-to lighting setup in the studio. So I use one light, which is the 47-inch Octobox, as I talked about before. I peak at 200 and I put it on quarter power. So if you're shooting yourself and you're using maybe a speed light, quarter power is usually a very good place to start. 9 times out of 10, I'll leave it on quarter power. Full power is way too bright really for portraiture unless you're shooting moving subjects, high speed dancers and whatnot. Half power is still bright actually. So quarter power, even an eighth, is a good place to be for portraiture. And as I said before, the Octobox, you want the bottom of it level with the chin, so slightly higher than normal. So this image here was shot on f8, ISO 100 and 160 on the speed. So ISO stays at 100 because you don't need to put it up. The speed light, the studio light is going to do all the work for you. Speed 160, 125, around there. Portraiture, they're not moving, so you don't have to go too high. And you don't want to go too slow. I would never go below 100 just in case you get camera shake or something, and you don't want a blurry image. Studio photography, you want it to be totally sharp. That's the beauty of using the studio lights. If you go over 250, you're going faster than the lights, so you're going to get the black curtain come in. You're going to get half a black line through it. So those are my go-to settings. This model is Graham, who, as I say, is coming to you, I think, soon. This got me a silver award, and it also got me a finalist in Portrait of the Year. And it was literally the first shot of the day. I think it was a test shot, actually. So it was just one light. The light was to camera left. You can see in his eyes the shape of the Octobox. And it was feathered to the left. So if you don't know what feathering means, it wasn't straight onto him. It wasn't pointed directly at his face. It was from the side, pointing to the side of the wall. So he wasn't in direct light. He was just getting the edge of the light. That's pretty much how I light, actually. So I never point my light directly at someone. I want it softer than that. So I feather it, which means the light is coming across them. And that way you don't get horrible shadows behind. I'm obsessive about lighting, and I'm obsessive about shadows, and I hate shadows behind on portraits, because that's bad lighting if you've got a shadow behind, unless it's film noir and you want it that way. Generally speaking, you want no shadows behind at all. Fine art lighting is, again, it's two lights. So it's the light we just described, the one light to the side, and there's a light above as well. So in this case, we had the Octobox on a boom arm above the models. And it gives quite a painterly classic style. It's sort of reminiscent of the 17th century sort of golden age painters, Rembrandt. So you've got Rembrandt lighting on some of these, or generally with this lighting, you get the Rembrandt lighting, which is half lit from the side with the little triangle of light under the other eye. And they are quite contrasty images, a little bit of drama, slightly warmer tones, because that's how the artists used to paint by window light. So we're sort of emulating what they used to do, but creating it in the studio. So yeah, that's with two octoboxes. One is feathered camera left, and one is suspended above them on a boom. Now here's where you have the shadows, so sort of film noir lighting. So you have very contrasty black and whites. In this case, we would use a directional modifier. So you want quite a harsh light. It's usually a beauty dish or a snoot. And because they're going to be processed in black and white, quite often we'll have a hair light on the back, which is just a light pointing to the back of the head, just so that you can see where they end, where the model ends, and where the background starts. So it's just a light on a very low power behind them, just so you see a bit of definition of where they end and where the background starts. But yeah, in this case, you can go for more shadows, because that's what you want. Coloured lighting, gel lighting, quite complicated lights to use. So gels, if you haven't used them before, you haven't seen them before, they look like little coloured cellophane, well, quite big, about this big, go over your speed light or over your light, like big sort of Quality Street wrappers, really. And they go over your light just to change the colour on the background, or to add some colour to the model. So the image on the left, it's quite subtle. So there's a blue light on the side, and there's a red light on the side, and there's a white light as well at the front to light her. So it's very subtle. The middle one is all out colour. There's lights going off all over the place. And the one on the right had a gel on the background to change the colour of the background, and it had I was shooting through some little sequins on a piece of perspex, so that gives the bokeh in the front, just for a sort of slightly more modern feel. When you're using gels, you need to be wearing something reflective, or have some oil on the skin to sort of show the colour on the skin. I don't do an awful lot of gel lighting myself in my work. It's a bit too modern. My style tends to be a slightly more vintage, but it's good to know how to work with gels for a sort of slightly edgier feel. Composition. So if you're doing something maybe a bit more conceptual, understanding composition is really helpful. So if you're shooting from above, then you're going to show your subject as vulnerable, smaller. If you're shooting from below, then they're going to look bigger, and they're going to look stronger, they're going to look more dominant, and they're going to have longer legs and just feel like they're dominating the image. So where you're shooting from will dictate how the image is seen by your viewers. Don't be afraid of negative space. Don't be afraid to crop in tight. Don't be afraid of shooting half a face. You don't necessarily need the whole face in for a successful portrait. So play with crops. You can crop the top of the head and very close to the bottom of the chin. It's quite an impactful crop, and quite a lot of photographers do it. You can crop half a face vertically and then have some negative space. So play around. If you're doing some portraiture, play around with your composition and see what you get. You don't necessarily need the whole head and shoulders in your shot. Having said that, if you are getting head and shoulders in your shot, I'm quite traditionalist, and I sort of go with the rule of thirds. So if I have got the full face in, I will always try and put the eyes on the third. If I've got negative space to the side, then I will put them on the vertical third, just because it feels better that way. It's just one of the rules of composition. So that works in that sense. We do read an image from left to right. So bear that in mind as well when you're thinking about your composition. What you don't want to do is come into an image from the left and then hit the back of someone's head. It just doesn't feel right. So I do take a look at your image and ask yourself, does it feel right? If not, then it's not working. I'm a very visual person. I don't use a light meter. What I do when I'm setting my lights up and taking a test shot is I will look at the back of the camera and see if the skin on the back of the camera matches the skin of my subject, and that will tell me if it's exposed, overexposed, underexposed, or if it's correct. So I will always match skin with skin, and very much go with how an image feels. So yeah, I don't use light meters or any of that. Editing. I'll just do this bit and then maybe stop for a break, because I think I'm blasting through this pretty quickly, and so I'll do this one and then we'll maybe take a break if that's okay. So editing, just a few tips on editing. So because I shoot a lot of women, skin, I do a lot of skin work. You can get away with a lot more on a man. Men don't mind looking rugged or having some character in their face. But let me tell you, no woman wants to look rugged, and most women want to look their absolute best on camera. So for skin, I usually clone on a low opacity. So if there's wrinkles across the forehead, I will clone on a low opacity to minimize the wrinkles, but not get rid of them completely. You want your subject to look like your subject, but just the best version of themselves. You don't want them to come out looking like Barbie, unless they look like Barbie already. But they need to look like themselves, but just the best version of themselves. I dodge and burn everything. So I darken down anything that I know the client won't be happy with. And I lighten anything that I know I want to showcase. So ultimately that's the face. I want the lightest part of any image to be the face, because I want you to look straight in the face when you look at a portrait. Don't want to be looking at the white thing in the corner that's catching my eye, or something that's bright over on the side. You need to look at your image. You can squint at it to see where the highlights are. I think sometimes when you're editing, you can't see the wood for the trees. You've looked at it so long, you think, yeah, that's a great image. But actually, if you do your edit, step away from it for a little bit, come back to it, and just note to yourself, what's the first thing I'm looking at? And if it's not the face, then there's something not quite right with it. You need to note to yourself, what are the distractions in the image? So you can squint at the screen and to see where the highlights are, or a good tip is to turn the image upside down and see where the highlights are. If you turn it upside down, your brain's not trying to read the image, but it will pick out the hot spots in the image. If there's anything that's not around the face, you need to tone it down or take it out. So with skin, I'll dodge and burn. So brightening and darkening, cloning on a low opacity. I'll take out anything. I'll use the healing tool to take out anything that's temporary. So if it's a spot, a cut, a bruise, we'll just take that out. Anything that's not going to be there next week, I'll remove that and then work with what's left. I would never HDR a portrait. I'd never increase the structure or the clarity or overly saturate on a female portrait. That's not flattering at all. Male portraits, you can get away with a little bit more. So male portraits, you can increase the clarity just a little bit to make it, it makes them look a little bit more rugged, but you can get away with that on a male portrait. If you're not going to do very much with your portrait at all, even just desaturating just a little tiny bit, maybe 5%, can make it feel a little bit more polished. So desaturating can tone down, if there's redness in the skin or yellowness in the skin, it can just tone it down just a little bit without you doing too much to it. Gives it slightly more polished feel. Yes, white balance. If you've got it wrong in camera and you need to correct it, just make sure skin looks like skin. Make sure skin doesn't look too pink or too yellow. Make sure that the picture that you're looking at looks like the actual subject who was in front of you at the time. Black and white conversions. I use Nik software, which is fantastic for black and whites. And just make sure with your black and white, you've got a definite black and you've got a definite white, and then everything in between in the image. Make sure it's not too sort of, I say shades of grey, but not too much grey in it, that you have got the full spectrum of black and white in there. I think that's it for editing. Are there any questions before we take a break?
Emma, when you tend to do a lot of your portrait work and you've got all your lights set up,
yeah,
I know you're on about your speeds around the 125, but never above 250. Do you do them all handheld?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
I do, because I change my composition with. You mean instead of using a tripod?
Yeah.
No, I don't use a tripod. I find them fiddly, and I like to change my angle and change my position and change my crop. I think because I'm a commercial photographer, I've always got a mind to what the client's going to buy. So I try and give as much variety as possible. So even from the same set with the same lights, I'll maybe, do a portrait, do a full body, do a 3/4 body, do a sort of arty crop. And I find that the more variety I give, the more they upgrade the package, because they can't decide what they want to buy. So I just like the flexibility of being able to move with the camera.
Yeah, probably react a bit quicker as well, won't it?
Yeah. I know some portrait photographers will, have it on a tripod and work like that. But for me, I'm all over the place. It's like photographer's yoga, the positions that I get into to get the angles and the shots. So and that's why I don't shoot with a prime lens in the studio. I like the flexibility of the 24-70 to be able to zoom in and zoom out and get different shots.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yes, could I ask, how do you go about preventing somebody's shoulder or their arms being a bit closer to the camera and looking larger than they should do in live?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Anything coming towards the camera is going to look bigger. So you have to make sure that they're posed correctly. So with my female work in the studio, I think people think I do a lot of retouch afterwards, but I don't. I make sure that they're posed correctly and I make sure it's lit correctly. So even with professional models who've been doing it for years, you sometimes have to tweak them. If they've got an arm or an elbow coming towards you, they're going to have a huge arm and then a little head. So always try and keep things in proportion. Likewise with legs. With what I do, obviously women want to look the best that they possibly can. So I'd never have legs coming towards me because they're just going to look thick and short. So legs are always going off to the side. And so even if you've got someone who's got fairly short legs, if you have the legs going off to the side, they're going to look about 9 foot tall. So yeah, it's a very good point that you just need to be mindful of how someone's posed. Even if you've got a man and they're leaning, if they've got their arm leaning on something, you need them to tip their body forward so that their head, it might feel unnatural for them, but it needs to look right in camera. So yeah, you just need to keep an eye with the posing as you're shooting to make sure that you don't get anything that looks out of proportion.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
How do you cope with body art? I mean, sometimes it can be very, very subtle and beautiful.
Mhm.
Other times it can look really quite naff.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're working with models, it might be different from if you're working with ordinary people who've come in for a family shoot.
Yeah. Do you mean like tattoos and things like that?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm not into tattoos personally. So if I do a casting call, I always specify no tattoos, only because my work is, it has a slight vintage edge, and I want it to be quite glamorous and and very feminine and very elegant. And for me, if I'm doing portfolio work for me, I'm not into tattoos, so I prefer not to have them. If I've got a model, if I'm booked for a commercial job and the model has a tattoo, to be honest, actually, a lot of commercial jobs, they also specify no tattoos. Tattoos are very personal to the person, and I think models that do have a lot of tattoos are actually losing some work because of them. Having said that, it's personal choice. You know, you express yourself the way you want to express yourself, and lots of clients have got tattoos, and so that's their choice, that's their body, that's their artwork. So yeah, just go with it.
Yeah.
Some want it to be showcased. Well, but they pretty much all do. They're already, you know, if you've chosen to have it and it's on your body forever, then you're proud of it. So I often find that I will shoot to showcase the tattoos, or the new tattoo, or, you know, whatever they've got. But yeah, if you're shooting for a competition or something like that, I shot a model recently and she had a tattoo on her forearm, and it was only subtle. And I left it in because I gave her the images and I left the tattoo in. But when I was submitting it for a competition with the Guild of Photographers, and I thought, you know what, it was like a fine art image as well. I thought it doesn't really fit this theme, to be honest. You know, it's a really beautifully lit, all sort of muted colours, and it's sort of quite a classic feel about it. But this tattoo just didn't sit right for me, so I took it out and I submitted the image. I got a silver award for it, and I don't know if the model will be happy that I took it out or not, to be honest. But I did. And it was successful without it. So I think you have to ask yourself if it fits what you're trying to sort of show in your image. With another client they booked a model and she had tattoos, but she hadn't said she had tattoos, and they wanted the tattoos removing, and it was all over her back. It was a huge, great big thing. It was enormous. So I outsourced the editing to a retoucher, because it would have taken me days to get rid of this enormous thing. So yeah, tattoos, yeah, they work or they don't work. But yeah, if it's a model that you've worked with and it's for a competition, just ask yourself whether it whether it fits with the look you're going for or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought there could be situations where it could be awkward. Yeah,
it can be tricky. It can be tricky, and I do take them out sometimes if a client has asked me to.
Yeah.
Or if I don't think it fits and it's been my work. But if it's for a private client, no, I would never touch it, because that's their work.
No. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions on anything I've talked about so far?
Yeah. Do you ever use continuous lighting, or do you always use flash?
I do use continuous lighting. Yeah, I started off actually using continuous lighting, and I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I used to have 2 enormous soft boxes with they had 5 bulbs in. They took me about an hour to set up. It was a nightmare, but the light was beautiful because it was daylight balanced. You could shoot kind of wide open, so you could shoot with a bit of depth. Even if you were shooting inside, it sort of gave it a more natural feel. But they were just, the lights were so big for the studio and so bulky. I got rid of them and went to sort of proper studio lights, Having said that, we are sponsored by Rotalight, so we have all the Rotalight kits, and we do use it sometimes in fact, we use it every time on our events, because it's just a nice, easy light to work with. The trouble I've got is sometimes it's not modified enough for me. Now that I've got used to working with the Octobox, which is, it's got 2 layers of diffusion, so it's super soft light. Sometimes the continuous light isn't as modified as I'd like it. Having said that, when it comes into its own, is if you're on location, you're shooting, if you're exposing for the ambient light, but you just need a little bit of fill sort of for the face, they're absolutely perfect for that. Fantastic. So yeah, I do use some continuous lights as well.
Okay. And if you're doing say a family outdoor shoot, would you just use natural light, or would you still take some type of lighting with you?
No, I just, for families, the 2 businesses are so split. There's no crossover at all. So they're on completely separate websites, separate emails, separate branding, separate social media. And I've never, I mean, I should, but I've never shot a family with lights. So I'll always find the light wherever I am, and we'll shoot with natural light for a number of reasons. One, it's a lot easier. If I'm doing a family shoot outside, we sort of move around from location to location. You sort of walk and talk, and this looks nice. Yeah, I'll do some here. You know, it's very sort of relaxed and natural. And what I don't want to be doing is setting up lights. When natural light is just fantastic, to be honest, if you're outside. And 2, with young children, which I do get a lot of bookings for younger children, it would just terrify them. I think it would be maybe a little bit too much. And also, if the light was set, then they'd have to stay in that position. And with younger kids, they won't stay where you put them. So I just go with natural light. I shoot usually 2.8. I'll shoot as wide as I possibly can. Because I love the separation from the background. I mean, a bit risky if you've got a moving subject and you're on 2.8, or if you've got multiple people, you have to be mindful that everyone's sharp. But when it works, it really works. And yeah, I don't tend to use any sort of artificial light with families.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions so far?
Just a quick one, Emma, on your Nick software, do you have presets for your black and whites, or do you do it as you go along?
Yeah, I've got presets. I've set my own for my taste. So I've got one that's set for female work and one that's set for male work. Just so the female one is sort of, it's a proper black and white, but I'm not increasing the clarity or anything on it. For the male preset, I've got a bit of clarity on that, because it just gives it a bit of oomph, and men don't mind a bit of ruggedness, whereas women don't want it. So yeah, I've sort of set my own to my own taste, and then I've got another one which I think is more for more commercial work. So it's just a sort of straight, it's quite a classic black and white, just so that I'm in control of what I'm getting, really, and also the work's consistent then as well.
Yeah, I will say, so you keep saying black and white throughout your work, right throughout, instead of mixing and matching all the time. Yeah, bit of consistency. Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
Thank you.